Do you want to know more about installing decoders in NScale locomotives? Why don't you stick around and watch this video and see how I did it. Hello everyone, Joe from Central Jersey Conrail and NScale. Welcome back to the Locomotive shop. So since I've wrapped up the work with the YouTube Model Builders channel, I've decided to get back on our channel and start doing some shop series videos. So going to kick it off here with a Locomotive shop video. This is going to be the NScale Enthusiast GP38-2, number 7776, done in Conrail Bicentennial colors. So why don't you watch the video and see how we did it. Okay, so here we are getting started installing our ESU Direct Micro Decoder 73100. I'm going to be installing the NScale Enthusiast Atlas GP38-2. We'll also be using the Zemo 8mm speaker, which you can see sitting there on my work mat. So with this install, I want to keep it pretty straightforward. I didn't want to get into heavy weathering or too many details because of the history of this unit. It wasn't in this paint scheme very long, as you find out from the details that come with the unit from NScale Enthusiast. The first thing that I'm doing is I'm soldering on the surface mount LED that comes with the leads attached. I've favored this lately over the standard LED that comes with the board because you can mount it directly to the headlight tube to get a more direct light. So this little trick I picked up from Benjamin Horn. What I use two AAA batteries in series to test the LED to make sure it works and to find which one is the positive lead. Then I solder it direct to the board. Once I solder, I just give it a nice little gentle tug to make sure that the connections are good. So now I am putting some solder on the board in preparation for installing the wire leads for the speaker. I like using these wires that come from ESU. They're very thin and flexible, and they're not very bulky, so they don't take up a lot of room inside the shell. About midway down on this board, on the top side is the two brass pads that is for the speaker leads. You can see from the diagram that comes with the ESU decoder where it's located at. So the Zemo speaker, 8mm speaker, it fits well in the chassis. However, the speaker baffle is a little too tall. It takes up too much room. So what I use a pair of nippers and I clip down, and this is a 3D printed unit, so you can just kind of snap along the lines. It's very convenient. It makes it easy. Now the Zemo speaker has a little rubber gasket on it that has a like an adhesive on it, so you just have to stick it to the baffle. It works out really well. I Here I am tinning the leads on the speaker. The reason I'm holding the speaker in my hand is because the speaker is magnetic, so it will stick to your soldering iron, and I've learned that through experience. So I just hold it by the baffle and then just put a little solder on it. Now I just gently clamp it in my vise by the speaker baffle, not the speaker itself, and then solder the leads onto the speaker. And then I give them a little gentle tug just to make sure there's a good connection. Don't pull too hard so you don't bend those tabs up on the speaker. Here's our completed assembly ready for install. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the case to disconnect the shell from the chassis. I'm going to remove the shell and pull it out of the way. Then I'm going to loosen the screws in the chassis and then release the motor tabs at the top to split the chassis partially to remove the light board. So after removing the light board on this unit, I noticed this is a little different than most of the Atlas units I've had. They have these little brass tabs in the rail here. So I'm just making sure to reinsert them. And there was also two more that got stuck on the light board when I pulled it off, so I'm going to put them back on the rear too. And that they're all inserted back in the little pockets. Okay, so now I'm going to install the ESU board, and I'm going to close up the chassis. Then I'll tighten up the screws on the frame. Remember, don't over tighten those screws because you don't want to strip them out, and also you may cause binding in the drivetrain. So now I'm going to put the speaker in position and get the wires where I want them. I'm going to hold everything down with Capcon tape. Also on this speaker I put a layer of Capcon tape on the tabs so that it doesn't short out on the bottom of the board. Yeah, I use the Capcon tape, you know, help neaten up the chassis and makes it all go back together nice and easy and nothing gets pinched. Big thing when you're sliding the speaker in under the board is you want to make sure that it's not lifting the board or bending it out of position. If it is, then you need to trim that speaker box back. Alright, so while you're watching me tighten up the chassis here with the Capcon tape, I want to talk about the headlight. So I initially tried epoxying the headlight in with some CA, and the CA just wasn't drying enough, and the headlight would still come out, and it just kind of make a gooey mess in there. So what I ended up doing was actually just low temperature hot glue and hot gluing it in there, and that worked out perfectly. So think about trying that. Here I am trimming the rear headlight housing. I found that the headlight housing in its full length was pushing down on the board and lodging it out of position. This wasn't evident until after my first test, which you'll see coming up soon. So when I went to reassemble and put the shell on the chassis, it seemed a little tight. I kind of really wasn't thinking about it. And then during my testing, what would happen was when I'd apply motor power, it would cause a ground and short out. What was happening, that was the board lifting out of the frame rails and being pushed down by the headlight housing. So what I ended up having to do was just remove the headlight housing altogether, and it solved the problem. So you'll notice that this at this time of the video, there's no rear number board, so I'm going to have to revisit that at a later time. Okay, here we are giving it a quick test, and notice the rear number boards are missing. So I decided to go with the Penn Central horn as best as I could find a match. There's a little bit of stuttering here because the track is dirty and the wheels on this unit need to be cleaned really well. Okay, so it sounds good. Let's go do some weathering. Okay, so Conrail didn't have very many special type paint jobs. They were pretty much all, up until 1994, the standard blue with the can opener logo. There was very few special paint jobs. This was one of those exceptions. So I really didn't want to obscure the paint job. I wanted to enjoy it for what it was looking like. But I wanted to be a little realistic. A lot of the pictures I saw online, the unit was very clean except for the top side of the hood. There was a lot of exhaust soot and some dirt. So I just went lightly on the hood on the top side and just left the sides alone so we could see the paint scheme. Didn't want to obscure it too much. Now, there's probably a lot of NScale collectors out there probably gritting their teeth right now, but, you know, I'm not a collector. I'm an operator. I like operating them. I want them to look realistic, so I figured, you know, I'm just going to go with it and I'll do a light weathering. So this time around, you know, I skipped the airbrushing and skipped the grill details and just stuck with what I know. To use the Bragdon powders, just give it a little dusting on the top, and pretty happy. If you notice, this is out of sequence because you can see the number boards there. This is before I realized the problem and pulled the number boards out altogether. Okay, and it's all done, and the unit's ready to go into service. So let's go check it out. All right, so there you go. So that's how we did it. You know, very, very happy with it. That ESU board fits in there perfectly. There's no milling that needs to be done. The Zemo speaker works out perfectly. You know, the only thing is the rear headlight. It was giving me a little trouble. You know, it would bend the board and it would lose contact, so what I had to do was just take out the headlight housing altogether. I'm going to have to go back and reinvestigate here and decide how to best trim it to fit so that it doesn't interfere with the board and you know, allows good operation. So, you know, this video was recorded a little while ago, towards the end of the summer. I'm just getting around to editing and putting it all back together. And, you know, so the Locomotive's been running probably now since the first week of September, and it runs really well. It's kind of one of my favorites because, you know, it is that unusual paint scheme. And, you know, what was really nice about NScale Enthusiast that they took the time to write out the card that came with the case to give you a little backstory on that paint scheme, because it wasn't around very long on Conrail. So, yeah, definitely a great addition to the roster, and it's working out perfectly. So that's all I have for this time on the Locomotive shop. So tune in next month. We're going to be doing a car shop video. We're going to be working on sand loads for our gondolas. And otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Central Jersey Conrail and NScale.